Hey guys, it's me, Rich. Something shocking is happening inside the Democratic Party, and it may be far worse than most people realize. Today, we're going to cover a growing Democrat civil war, a Texas Senate race that media may be spinning into something it really isn't, and a controversy that exposes just how deep political tribalism has become in America. And if you stick with me to the end of this video, you'll see how all three stories connect in a way that should concern every voter. However, the biggest story may not be the one making headlines right now. Let's get into it. All right, guys, welcome back to RPW Media, where we are MAGA first, conservative second, and Republican third. And our goal here is to bring you the most honest conservative analysis of news stories of the day. If you're new, like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you. Okay, today we're looking at three completely different stories. At least they appear different on the surface. One involves the Democratic Party itself. Another involves a major Senate race in Texas. The third involves a political commentator defending a candidate despite controversy. Here's the interesting part. All three stories point to the same underlying problem, a growing credibility crisis within the Democratic Party. And that crisis may be much bigger than most political professionals are willing to admit at this point. Let's start with the Democrats. The Democratic Party recently conducted a post-election review after disappointing performances in the 2024 election. Now, that review apparently acknowledged that the party has some serious problems. Now, normally after a major defeat, political parties engage in self-reflection. They ask what went wrong. They examine why voters rejected their message. They look at what issues matter most to ordinary Americans. That's politics 101. But critics are arguing that's not what's happening here. Instead, many observers believe Democrat Party leaders are doubling down on the same policies and messaging strategies that voters already rejected. It's almost like they're saying, you know, we're not going to hold our constituents to what they did in 2024. If they were stupid enough to vote for this other team, I mean, okay, so when we get back in, we will be magnanimous and we'll accept them into the fold and we'll be their leader. No, not at all. Not at all. Think about some of the major issues that dominated recent elections: border security, crime, inflation, education, gender ideology. These weren't fringe concerns, guys. These were kitchen table issues affecting millions of Americans. Yet many voters feel Democratic leadership has responded by telling voters they're wrong rather than asking why they feel that way. That's a dangerous strategy for a political party, because in a representative government, politicians are supposed to persuade voters, not lecture them. But Democrats have run out of ideas. They don't have any idea how to make American lives better. The larger concern being raised is that dissent inside the party is becoming less tolerated. When political movements begin policing internal disagreement, they often become less responsive to the public in general. And that's exactly what some critics believe is happening. Now, let's be fair. Political parties always have factions. Republicans have them, Democrats have them. That's normal. What's unusual is the level of frustration we're seeing from within Democrat circles themselves. When your own supporters start publicly questioning the direction of the movement, that's not just a messaging problem, guys. That's a warning sign. And it brings us to Texas, because if Democrats are struggling nationally, why are some media outlets suddenly pushing polls showing that Democrat James Talarico is leading Republican Ken Paxton? Interesting question, right? Recent polling has indeed shown Talarico with a small lead. The headlines practically rate themselves. It's like Texas turning blue, Republicans in trouble, Democrats on the rise. I mean, we've heard versions of this story before, many times, for years. Yet Texas continues electing Republicans statewide. Now, that doesn't mean Republicans should take anything for granted. Every election matters, every race matters, every vote matters. But there is a reason many conservatives are skeptical. Prediction markets continue favoring Paxton. Texas voting history still favors Republicans. And many of the same polling industries that missed key Republican support in previous cycles are now asking voters to trust them once again. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. But the media enthusiasm surrounding certain polls often tells its own story, because polling isn't just a measurement. Polling can become messaging. A poll doesn't merely reflect public opinion. Sometimes it's used to shape public opinion, and polls are only good for that split second in time. The only real poll is on election day. And that's where conservatives become suspicious here. When one favorable poll gets massive coverage while contrary indicators receive little to no attention at all, people begin wondering whether they're being informed or persuaded. The reality is that Texas remains one of the most important political battlegrounds in America. National Democrats desperately want a breakthrough there. Republicans desperately want to prevent one. The stakes are enormous, which is exactly why voters should look beyond headlines. So this is the guy we're supposed to believe has suddenly surged ahead of Ken Paxton at the very beginning? Maybe. But something about that claim doesn't pass the smell test. If you've been paying attention for more than one election cycle, you've seen this movie before. The moment a Democrat becomes the media's favorite darling, polls start appearing that show a dramatic shift in the race. That's exactly what happened in 2024 when Kamala Harris became the Democrats' de facto nominee without a single primary vote. Remember that? Almost immediately, headlines began suggesting that she seized the momentum. The Hill even reported that Harris held 1-point lead over Donald Trump at the start of the campaign. Now, whether we've seen these flashes of polling excitement before or not, the question isn't whether a single poll can show a candidate is ahead. The question is whether that supposed surge actually holds up once real voters start paying attention and ballots start getting cast. It's the same thing here with Talarico. Now let's move to story number 3. This one may be the most revealing of all. According to reports, progressive commentator Kyle Kulinski defended Democrat Senate candidate Graham Plattner despite controversy surrounding reported inappropriate online communications. This is the guy with the Nazi tattoo. The details matter less than the reaction, because the reaction exposed something many Americans already suspect. Political tribalism is becoming stronger than principles. Think about that. How often do we hear public figures talk about accountability? Like never? Or it's always accountability for the other party, not for their own. How often do we hear speeches about standards? How often are Americans told that character matters? Well, quite a bit, until the person involved belongs to the right team. Then suddenly everything becomes more complicated. The context becomes important. The nuance becomes essential. And the standards become very flexible. Again, this isn't unique to just one side. Political hypocrisy exists everywhere, but voters are increasingly noticing it and they're tired of it. Americans don't expect perfection. What they expect is consistency. If conduct is unacceptable when an opponent does it, it should also be unacceptable when an ally does it. That seems pretty straightforward if you ask me. Yet modern politics often struggles with that concept. What's particularly damaging is what it does to the public trust. Every time voters see double standards, they become more cynical. And look, Americans can spot double standards a mile away. Every time they see rules applied selectively, they become more skeptical, especially after 4 years of warm diarrhea brains Joe Biden's regime. I mean, they applied the rules very selectively against conservatives. Every time Americans see loyalty prioritized over principle, confidence in institutions declines. And that's the thread connecting all three stories: credibility. The Democratic Party faces questions about whether it is listening to their voters. The media faces questions about whether they are reporting truthfully. Political commentators face questions about whether principles matter more than partisan loyalty. Different stories, same issue, trust. And trust is incredibly difficult to rebuild once it's lost. That's why these stories matter. Not because they're isolated controversies and not because they're today's headlines, but because they reveal larger trends reshaping American politics. Voters are becoming more independent, more skeptical, more willing to challenge institutions they once trusted automatically. And frankly, that's not necessarily a bad thing. A healthy republic depends on citizens who think critically, citizens who ask questions, citizens who refuse to accept narratives simply because powerful people tell them to. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, independent, or somewhere in between, accountability really matters. Transparency matters. Credibility matters. And when those things start disappearing, voters notice. Well, guess what? The voters are noticing those things disappearing in the Democratic Party. The political establishment may not like that reality. The media may not like that reality. Some politicians certainly don't like it, but it's happening anyway. And it may end up defining the next several election cycles. Now, the bright side here is that voters are paying closer attention than ever before. Americans are questioning narratives, demanding accountability, and refusing to blindly follow political institutions. That's how a healthy republic is supposed to work. The more informed and engaged citizens become, the stronger our country gets. And I believe that, and you should too. All right, so tell me what you think in the comments below. I love hearing from you guys. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Little by little, piece by piece, I take back what's been stolen from me. Little by little, piece by piece, until I'm complete.